The Baltimore Ravens have a new defensive coordinator. We talk about that. John Harbaugh, Ed Reed, and more with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we've returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I am your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, and we're here today on a Purple Friday. That is a huge Purple Friday in Ravens history, I guess, and we'll look back on it, I think, as one, as the Ravens late Thursday night picked their new defensive coordinator in former University of Michigan defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald. Now, this was a very late breaking news item for the Ravens. And so what happened here for this show today is Qadry Ismail and I recorded our show. We recorded it earlier before the news dropped. Now, this news came out right as I was about to sit down and edit the show, and it's too big of news not to talk about. So I'm going to be talking about Mike Macdonald solo in the first segment. And then in the second segment, we'll get to Q and talk with him about John Harbaugh and Ed Reed and some of those comments that came out yesterday and some of the controversies surrounding John Harbaugh. And then in the final segment, we're actually going to do a conference championship preview courtesy of Locked On Now, where four experts from the teams on the Locked On Podcast Network that are in the conference championship will do a quick breakdown of the game. But the Macdonald news is exciting. I'm excited to talk about it here. I'm sad that Q and I couldn't chop it up about him, and we did our show earlier because we talked in that first segment about what we wanted out of the defensive coordinator, whoever it was going to be. We didn't know at that time, but now we know, so we're going to talk about it here on this show. So if you are here with us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. We are here 5 days a week. It really helps out if you do that. And our first goal is 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're growing every day, and it's really exciting. So I would greatly appreciate if you have already subscribed. I appreciate that. And if you haven't, I appreciate it if you would. Also, if you're here with us in audio form, be sure to follow the show. I greatly appreciate you as well. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at KOstriker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So let's talk about Mike Macdonald, right? Let's do it, because this is an A+ hire, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. This is the type of hire that I think the Ravens needed. Now, when people look at head coaching candidates or offensive coordinator candidates, it's like, oh, we want the young offensive mind that can really innovate a lot of new ideas and put guys in positions to win and do all that kind of stuff. Well, the Ravens, I think, are getting that on the defensive side of the ball with Mike Macdonald. Macdonald spent the first 7 years of his coaching career, or at least professional coaching career, with the Ravens and in a couple of roles, defensive assistant. He worked with the secondary coaches and also was the linebackers coach. He establishes himself in Baltimore. He then goes to Jim Harbaugh at the University of Michigan and turns that defense around. A stat here from Jonas Schaefer: Mike Macdonald, he literally did turn it around. The year before Mike Macdonald got to Michigan, the Wolverines ranked number 106 in defensive efficiency. If you look at ESPN's FPI, in 2021, they finished number 13 in the country in defense and won their first conference title since 2004. And when you look at the Michigan media and look at the Michigan players and even the coaching staff that Macdonald worked with, you have nothing but good things that are being said. You know, you have Aiden Hutchinson, who was going to be a top 5 pick at the very least. You know, he has the potential to go number 1 overall. He was asked by Chris Long, what changed for you? And Hutchinson pretty much said, the first 3 years I had a defensive coordinator, but the last year I had a new defensive coordinator. He started to stand up more, and he felt that adjustment, which was great for him. And you look at other guys too. I mean, guys just speak so highly of him. Part of the thing I really like about Macdonald is his adjustments. His adjustments in game, I think, are going to be huge. We saw with Don Martindale a little bit. He was a very live by the blitz, die by the blitz type coordinator, where if the blitz was working, he was going to keep doing it. If the blitz was not working, he was going to keep doing it. It didn't really matter. And the in-game adjustments, I just don't think were there. Macdonald was very, very good at that in Michigan in 2021, something that I'm very excited about, because I think the adjustments Martindale made in the second half of the season, I've talked about this, were good, especially moving away from the blitz a little bit. But we saw it. We can talk about the Las Vegas game in week 1. The blitzes were not working. He kept doing it, and they end up losing the game because they go all out, and Zay Jones is wide open for a touchdown. So Macdonald is also a coach that I think is going to help a lot of young players, and he's somebody who overall just puts people in position to make plays. You see multiple people talk about that aspect of him as well. And as a coach that, you're kind of thinking, well, where do the Ravens want to go defensively? What do they want to do from a defensive perspective? Are they going to completely abandon what Martindale built? Are they going to go completely different from that? Or is it going to be kind of that, all right, Wink Martindale Jr. type role? I think this is a right in the middle type hire where it's not going to be the same as Don Martindale. You're not getting that guy who is just like, all right, we're going to blitz all the time and do this and that. But you also have somebody who has been around the organization, who understands what it's like to be in that building, be around the coaching staff, is familiar with most of the defensive personnel. I mean, Patrick Queen, I think, is ecstatic about this movie. He's tweeted multiple times about it. He was Queen's coach, the inside linebackers coach. He worked with Queen immensely during his rookie season before leaving for Michigan. So it seems like the players are excited about it. I'm excited about it. And this is like technically it's an external hire because he did come from the University of Michigan. But is it really an external hire? I mean, no, but it's funny that it will be labeled as one. It's the first external hire is for a defensive coordinator in Ravens history. And Macdonald is the youngest defensive coordinator in Ravens history by I think a very large margin. So you have a young, innovative mind. I'll keep coming back to that as we continue to break it down and talk about it because it's really exciting. And a point I want to make is people who are concerned about the whole, this is just like, I've seen like Ravens puppet or like something crazy like that. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. And part of my reasoning why is because Macdonald, as I talked about, established himself in Baltimore, right? He worked his way up. He worked with a bunch of different positional groups. He understands the game in general. But then what you have is he actually goes to the University of Michigan to be the leader of that defense. Now, I will say it is obvious. The college football ranks are much different than NFL, right? The college football game versus the NFL game, it is very different. And despite that, even though, we'll take that into consideration, Macdonald went to Michigan and spread his wings out. He was tasked with building that defense and growing that defense. And he did just that, not from like any pressure within the Ravens organization. It wasn't like the Ravens organization was watching over him being like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. No, he got to Michigan. He talked with who he wanted to talk to. He got together with the top brass there and he's like, look, this is what I want to do. And they were like, awesome. So he goes in, he implements those strategies, and he has success doing his own thing. So it's not like the Ravens are in his ear saying, oh, well, you should do this more. You should blitz here, or you should put this guy in and this personnel grouping. No, he went to Michigan, did the thing, did it well, and is now coming back to Baltimore, I think, with immense growth, with something that without that play calling experience, I don't think we would have seen. And maybe if he's a defensive coordinator, he struggles a little bit. And that's something that I believe it was Peter King who put out that the Ravens were tabbing Macdonald to be the heir to Martindale when that time came. But then he leaves for Michigan because I think he is a very well-respected coach, someone who is, again, up-and-coming young defensive mind. It's great that they're going this route. I think it's a breath of fresh air. It's something that I think many people should be excited about because what he now can do is, because he understands what this defense was like under Martindale and what did work under Martindale and was there firsthand for it, he can say, look, we're not going to blitz 5% of the time now. We're going to go out there. We're going to apply some pressure. But he coached up Aiden Hutchinson. He coached up David Ajabo and Daxton Hill and all these different players where, Ajabo and Hutchinson are supposed to be 2 top 15 picks. Like, that's how good they were in 2021 for Michigan. And Hutchinson has always been kind of a beast type player, but he took it to another level in 2021. Ajabo, who has very limited football experience, kind of profiles to Odafe Owe in that way, where it's like he hasn't been playing football for that long, showed immense potential in college. And now we're going to see that. Now, Owe didn't have any sacks during his final season. Ajabo had more than no sacks in his final season, but it's 2 players here who I think if you have a combination of Owe and Ajabo, that's a really scary duo for years to come. So we'll see if the Macdonald hiring has any influence on that Michigan connection. It probably does. It probably does, because what Jim Harbaugh did for, Michigan in 2021, it wasn't just the Mike Macdonald show, right? Macdonald worked with Harbaugh. He worked with all these different players. and really got the most out of that defense. But it's going to be so fun to see what Macdonald does, and it's something we'll break down throughout the rest of the offseason, really, because this conversation with how can the Ravens improve on defense, where can they take from Don Martindale's defense and continue to improve that? I think Macdonald is the perfect choice. They had a bunch of good candidates they were interviewing. I mean, Anthony Weaver could have been good there. I thought Chris Hewitt would have been an option. They interviewed Chris Richard and Joe Witt Jr. and a lot of these guys, but I think at the end of the day, Macdonald was the right decision. The Ravens, I think, were very upset that Macdonald got away in the first place. I think they really, really liked him, and that was probably a very hard loss for them to see him go off, and an opportunity he deserved 10,000%. But now he's coming back to Baltimore. He's coming home. He's coming home, and now we'll see how this hire plays out. But we'll head into our first break. When we get back, we'll be diving into our talk with Q, talking about John Harbaugh, Ed Reed, and more. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. Hey, Ravens fans, this is Kevin Ostraker with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about in Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill-up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200-$300 a year in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back is added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank, you got PayPal or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. That's code TOUCHDOWN. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year, and that means a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. So take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. It's our second segment of this Locked On Ravens Friday edition. Kevin Ostraker still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. John Harbaugh has been in the news a bunch over the course of his career, but something happened on Thursday where Ed Reed appeared on a podcast, put out some comments about the Ravens in general. So I'm just going to read a couple of those excerpts from this quote and then get your thoughts on them here. So he pretty much says, quote, "Leadership matters. Look what Baltimore has done since Ray and I, Anquan, Terrell Suggs, and all those holding out, all of us left. Maybe not left when we were not in the building after that. Since 2013, I think they won only like one or two playoff games. Like the Ravens just haven't done much." And he also says the locker room is for the players. The locker room is led by players. Coaches don't lead grown men. It's a partnership. It's truly a partnership when you get to the league, end quote. So Q, what are your thoughts on those quotes? Because really Ed Reed is pretty much saying, they can be taken in a lot of different ways. So how do you take those quotes?
Yeah, I think first, Ed, he's going to speak how he's going to speak and say it from the heart. So I think leadership-wise, one of the greatest leaders in that locker room to ever, put on a uniform and had everybody's attention, him, Ray, Terrell, all those, big-name guys. And offensively, mentioned Anquan. That was very interesting because Anquan wasn't necessarily – homegrown. He was brought in from a free agent standpoint, but Anquan, absolutely, yeah, he has that dog in him, if you will, and really, it's like, hey, I'm not going to just say it, I'm going to do it. Let's go out there and let's get it done. The seasons, they all have their own. They have their own story to be told, but within those stories that need to be told, you have to have a level of narration from the guys within the locker room. And when it comes to John Harbaugh, I think he, in the beginning was trying to establish himself. He established himself. Everybody kind of was on a lockstep. I don't think it's necessarily needing of a strong voice. I think the locker room is still a good, positive locker room, and guys really respect one another. So I'm not exactly sure where Ed is going with that, but I also will say, like, in my mind, I think, Ed, it's as if he is saying that there's something missing as far as John and what John brings to the table as a coach. So I'm kind of curious as to what he feels, is missing when it comes to, maybe he should have, or he felt like he should have gotten an opportunity to coach in Baltimore. I know when I think was it the Texans he was with?
Yeah.
I know that when he was down there was a lot of, the Ed Reed freelancing and some of the things that Ed was saying, you're a Hall of Famer, bro, but not everybody can do what you can do. And so you can't teach it that way. But Ed is just an amazing player. I think he has a genius football mind. And I am curious as to what he feels is a lack of leadership. But he's right when it comes to, the did you go to the Super Bowl after we were no longer on a team? No. Have you consistently at least even been in the conversation of an AFC Championship game? And the answer is no. So he's right in that regards. I'm not sure they what the end means is when he came to mentioning those comments.
Right, and he also said stuff about, him and John Harbaugh had to hash things out and, kind of get together and get on the same page before making that Super Bowl run. And it's crazy because after that Super Bowl win, the offseason that followed was just a massive change. They traded Anquan Bolden away because they couldn't come to an agreement on the contract. Guys like Paul Kruger, Donnell Ellerbe, all these different guys, they cut Bernard Pollard. It was kind of like a shift almost. You obviously had the retirements of Ray Lewis and Matt Burke. So it's like all these guys who were there are all of a sudden gone. And then it's like, all right, well, now the Ravens have to construct this team. And 2013 was not a season to remember by any stretch of the imagination. 2014, they kind of got back to it. But I think the interesting part here is, Q, is that John Harbaugh has kind of built himself as a coach. You kind of talked about him establishing himself. And he, back in 2010, let's say, is not the same coach he is now in 2022. He has undergone a shift, and I think it's worked out well for him, but he was not a player's coach at first. There have been multiple stories about him and just the different styles of coaching he was about, very early on in his tenure as head coach versus what he is doing now. So, Q, do you kind of want to elaborate on that a little bit, just like what you have come to know John Harbaugh as a coach based off what he was before, and if you still think that he is the right person to lead this Ravens team, because it seems like the organization trusts him. And I mean, look, he's had the regular season success, but many have, I think, expressed disappointment in the recent playoff success.
I think when it comes to John Harbaugh early on, he was dealt a tough hand. He had some strong guys, strong voices in the locker room. But I think he also kind of saw some strong voices in that Philly locker room too, and Brian Dawkins and obviously, Donovan McNabb and some of the other players. They were strong-willed men as well. So it was like he couldn't handle it, but I think, he was fully on tested. Terrell Suggs was still playing well after, Ed was gone. And I think, for T-Sizz, he fell in line, if you will, not in a negative way, but in the way of thinking, look, I know who you are, John. I respect you, and I'm going to play for you. I just think that the Joe Flacco era it is one where people will debate, was it Joe or was it the defense? I think Joe complimented the defense, not the other way around. I think Joe with Anquan Bolden was incredible. I think that Steve Bisciotti was saying about the cap hit, and if you release him, then there would have been no Darryl Smith, and Darryl Smith had a good year, to help C.J. Mosley or whatever, but that showed you that it was more defensive-centric than it was offensive-centric, even though you got a franchise quarterback. And I think that the Ray Rice off-field stuff derailed everything. That and the Anquan Bolden trade, say what you will, but, man, if Ray, would have obviously had his life issues off the field in order, I think that team would have been competing for a heck of a lot more championships. And I think, current day John is one where, again, you are dealing with salary cap. You got tremendous turnover from year to year to year. Like I'm looking at these roster sheets, and okay, you're right. I mean, Anthony Levine, he retired. Good for him. Well, when I see this next roster, he ain't gonna be on it. There are going to be some guys that you're hoping is going to pan out, but will they? I know Miles Boykin, he's been there for 3 years. Like, he hasn't really panned out, not the way you were, hoping that he would. So it's not that I'm saying it's all John, but John, yeah, the buck stops with him. And clearly, from an offensive mindset, he's fired many an offensive coordinator. But then at the same time, he's also fired, some defensive coordinators or reshifted, or however you want to say it. But this recent one is where he fired Wink Martindale. And so I don't think he's necessarily on the hot seat. I hear, there's stories talking about how he's going to get an extension. But yeah, I think there's something, where there's smoke, there's fire. And it's interesting. Ed's comments came out when they did.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned kind of the derailing moments for this franchise. The Ray Rice stuff and the Anquan Bolden trade, 2 huge turning points. But another one I want to throw in there is the Gary Kubiak situation, where the offense in 2014 was phenomenal. I mean, that zone blocking scheme was incredible. When he left for Denver after that 2014 season, it was crushing. It was crushing because I don't know about you, but I thought that Kubiak offense could have been successful in Baltimore for such a long time.
Oh, I thought, I've seen it when he was with the Texans. When I was with the broadcast team, we'd go down to Houston and watch it up close and personal. And Andre Johnson doing his thing on every deep over route. Matt Schaub, looked like a second coming. I'm like, man, this dude. You talk about Kirk Cousins all you want. Well, Matt Schaub was Kirk Cousins before Kirk Cousins. Like, he wasn't probably going to win you, but he certainly had talent enough to make some really fun, entertaining games. So that being said, like, yeah, man, God, I really love this, the way they ran the ball. I love the zone concept. Yeah, it's the theory of expanding angles. And so, in other words, the more you try to reach a guy on his outside edge of his shoulder, and you're going to that aiming point, that aiming point starts, if you're a running back, at the butt of the tackle, and everything goes to that point. Well, now the theory of expanding angles, the more you try to reach and the more people keep running laterally, the holes open up. And so now it looks like you have all these options, but technically you're just looking for the expanding angle when I could cut it right back, because they sealed off the backside. And obviously when they made the chop block on the backside illegal, that kind of derailed a lot of the positive Denver Bronco 1,000-yard backs. However, when it came to what we saw here in Kubiak and what he did, it was awesome. I was like, wow, you could have seen it do its thing. And when they went up to New England, like, they were on point. Like, it was so cool. So it was, yeah, you got me going on memory lane. I'm pontificating.
No, it's a good thing. And, that New England game was a crushing one, the 2 blown 14-point leads, the Edelman to Amendola play, it's all that. But that whole season, it felt like another year for them, and it just didn't turn out to be. But my stance on Harbaugh is I think he is the right man for now to lead this team. But I do think they cannot continue to be complacent with the wild card round or with the divisional round. This is a team that has so much potential to go to a Super Bowl, to win multiple Super Bowls with a franchise transcendent talent in Lamar Jackson leading them. They have built a good wide receiver core around him. They have good young running backs. The next steps for them are going to be key, because I think before Harbaugh, it would be Roman who gets the next axe. And then after that, if things continue to not improve, then I think, the top
You gotta look into
brass,
it.
right, Exactly. You got to look into it because,
Right.
yeah, it is as long as John Harbaugh is a member of the Ravens organization, I think he's going to have the players. The players will want to play for him. He wants to coach for his players, and that culture is amazing. But at the same time, you have to have those on-field results, and if they aren't there, then it's hard to make an argument for keeping him, regardless of how good of a players coach he actually is. But Q, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me here, talking about some controversy and what should be a busy start to a busy offseason for this Ravens team.
It's going to be busy. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. And we're just going to keep breaking it all down.
Yeah, we're going to keep breaking it all down. We're not done here yet, though. When we get back here in our final segment, we'll be talking about a conference championship preview. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And there's so many flavors to choose from. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 50% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We returned here. It's our final segment of this Locked On Ravens Friday edition. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. A big thank you to Qadry Ismail for coming on talking about this Ravens team, some of the controversies and also some of the news about this team. And now as we head into our final segment, we're going to actually do a conference championship preview here as we have local experts from the 4 conference championship teams breaking down these 2 games. We had a great divisional weekend, and now as we kind of enter the week before the Pro Bowl and 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, we have, I think, 4 teams that deserve to be there, but also the 2 teams that come out of the AFC and as well as the NFC. They're going to be big. But before we get into that, I do want to answer one final mailbag question, and we're going to round out the mailbag right here, right now, quickly from Sad Ravens fan. He asked, do you think they're just keeping Giro because the offensive coordinator they want is still in the playoffs, or are they willing to die by Giro? I think the Ravens are keeping Greg Roman right now, and that's what all indications are pointing to, it seems like at this point, because I think injuries are a key part of it. Honestly, I also think when the Ravens earlier in the year, when they had that offense, obviously not at full strength without Dobbins or Edwards, but you had them with Lamar Jackson still and some of those other pieces still. They were performing well. They were putting up points and this, that, and the other. They weren't perfect, but I think the pass offense improved. I think the team just wants to see what Greg Roman can do with a fully healthy offense when, there isn't that, all right, this guy's out, now that guy's out, now that guy's out. So I don't think it's because there's a guy they want in the playoffs. I just think that they think Roman is their guy for at least part of next season. If there's a struggle, though, and Greg Roman struggles with a fully healthy offense, then you might be talking about a midseason change. But again, we'll see about all that. But let's dive now into this conference championship preview, courtesy of Locked On Now here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Coming up, Championship Sunday is just days away, and we've got to punch 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. Who will serve as the reigning AFC and NFC champions for the year to come? We'll find out what each team still standing needs to do to earn a conference title on Locked On Now NFL.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
You're listening to Locked On Now NFL, local experts on the biggest stories throughout the NFL. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and thanks so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Our Locked On NFL hosts are here to look ahead to the NFC and AFC championship games. Let's start where these teams are trying to get to Los Angeles, SoFi Stadium. They will host the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, but first, the Rams have to host the 49ers for the NFC crown.
The biggest game.
San Francisco 49ers fans don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo will be their starting quarterback next season, but they do know that he'll be under center to try to win his second NFC championship game in 3 years against the Rams on Sunday. With a chance to remain undefeated against the NFC in the postseason, our Locked On 49ers host says the key to a San Francisco victory is Jimmy G not making the big mistakes that could cost the Niners the whole game.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy, former NFL and AFL defensive back Eric Crocker, and I am one half of the Locked On 49ers crew, here to give you your 49ers main key to victory as they travel to Levi South and take on the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC Championship game. All right, I think this game, it begins and ends with the play of Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, if I had to give just one main key victory here, it's Jimmy G. Don't turn the ball over. And if you do, just limit it. So right now, 49ers, the way I see it, Jimmy G, one turnover. That's all we're giving you. Just one. Anything more than that, it'd be trouble for the San Francisco 49ers. All right, so that's going to do it, man. I hope you guys appreciate that. Make sure you guys listen to our show as well, Locked On 49ers, the best show on the Locked On Network podcast. Let's go, 49ers. Win this game this Sunday.
Matthew Stafford picked up his first playoff win just a couple of weeks ago, and now he's a win away from playing the biggest football game on the planet in the Rams' home stadium. Our Locked On Rams host tells you how LA gets the veteran QB to the Super Bowl he's chased for 12 whole seasons.
Hey, it's Travis Rogers from Locked On Rams. So here is the one key to victory this weekend for the Rams in the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. Remember when you used to play with matches as a kid and maybe you'd get away with it once in a while, and a couple of weeks, months, years later, you realize how bad of an idea that was, that you could have burned the whole house down? That was the Rams in Tampa against the Bucs. They were playing with matches. They turned it over way too many times. 4 turnovers in that game. Somehow they escaped. Somehow they beat Tom Brady despite turning it over 4 different times. If they're going to beat the Niners, they simply cannot do that. They might be able to get away with 1. 2 is probably the end of the wrap. And anything more than that, it is absolutely not going to happen for you there. You can check out more about the Los Angeles Rams on my podcast, Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is free and available on all platforms. Your team every day.
The Kansas City Chiefs played the Cincinnati Bengals just a few weeks ago at the end of the regular season, and Cincy won. So how do the Chiefs make sure that that doesn't happen again with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line? Our Locked On Chiefs says a combination of learning from the mistakes of that game and keeping the momentum going from last week will add up to a big win. But he has more on the details.
The AFC Championship game comes down to 2 things for the Kansas City Chiefs. Can Patrick the Reaper Mahomes continue his run as we saw against the Bills? And can the Chiefs defense and its staff learn its lessons from the last time they played the Cincinnati Bengals? I'm Ray Tracy from Locked On Chiefs, and that's what it comes down to. You saw an extraordinary effort by the offense, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, to not only get to overtime, but then win it. They don't need to do that. They have to avoid it, in fact, in order to get this win against a team that is nearly as explosive. On the other side, you have to be careful if you're Steve Spagnuolo or anyone out there on the field on the defensive side of the ball to not overreact to what you saw the last time when Jamar Chase destroyed that secondary on a circus catch after circus catch. Tyrann Mathieu should be back and playing in this ballgame. That helps. You have to adjust and you have to play over the top and you have to try to take Chase and limit him, not take him away, because then you're devoting too many other resources to that and someone else is going to hurt you. I think they're going to play more zone. I think they have to back off and let Joe Mixon hurt them if he can. They'll live with that, and that will get them the win. For more on this game and your Chiefs, check out Locked On Chiefs. We're free on every platform. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Joe Burrow took a beating last week as he fought his way into the AFC Championship game. And while Cincinnati does already have a win against Kansas City under its belt this season, our Locked On Bengals host says that the team can't get a second one if it doesn't keep its quarterback on his feet.
Will the Bengals take down the Chiefs on Sunday in Kansas City and advance to the Super Bowl? Hi again, everyone. I'm James Rapine of the Locked On Bengals podcast, and that is the question going into this epic AFC Championship game between 2 teams that played each other this month. They played each other on January 2nd at Paul Brown Stadium. The Bengals came out victorious 34-31, overcoming 3 different 14-point deficits. I expect Sunday to be a different story. The Bengals can't fall behind against this Chiefs team by 2 scores and expect a rally on the road. But the number one key, protect Joe Burrow. Burrow was sacked 9 times last week against the Titans. He was hit 13 times. And yeah, the offense had 19 points. Well, 19 points isn't going to cut it against Patrick Mahomes. The magic number, 40. If they can somehow get to 40, you feel good about their chances. How do they do that? They keep Joe Burrow upright. If they do that, he can distribute the ball to all of his weapons, including Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. And the Bengals just might sneak in to the Super Bowl. For more, make sure you check out the free and the only daily Bengals podcast, Locked On Bengals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
That's a wrap for us here. Thanks so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every day. For more on the National Football League and your team, make your second listen Locked On NFL and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kim Becker. This has been Locked On Now, Locked On your team every day.
These games are going to be good. They're big games, and for what the Ravens can maybe look forward to in 2023, the 2023 playoffs is hopefully an AFC Championship, a Super Bowl berth. But for now, the Ravens in the 2022 offseason. But a big thank you to everybody over there at Locked On Now, and also the hosts of those teams. As you know, since I'm the host of Locked On Ravens, I'm not talking about that right now. But again, hopefully I am next year. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in and making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, like the video. Our first goal is 1,000 subscribers. We're growing every day. It's really exciting. So thank you to everybody who has already subscribed. And for those who haven't already, I thank you for your future subscription. If you're here with us in audio form, thank you as well. Be sure to turn notifications on and follow me on Twitter at Cashrick34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. But again, that's it here for us at Locked On Ravens. When we get back here on Monday after a 2-day break, we'll be diving into a weekend of maybe Ravens news, but if not, we'll be talking about our final installment of the Ravens 2021 season review, getting into weeks 13 through 18. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you on Monday.